Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. Democrats are in panic mode heading into 2024 as Joe Biden's poll numbers continue to plummet nationwide and in the swing states. So, what's the left's game plan? It's simple. Change the rules and kick their opponent off the ballot. Earlier today, President Biden declined to comment on the Colorado Supreme Court's decision, but asserted that Trump supported an insurrection. He's absolutely sure. Take a look.
Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Of course, Trump hasn't been charged or convicted of insurrection, but the left celebrated the court's vast overreach in Colorado. Turns out not everyone is on board. 2024 independent candidate RFK Jr. warned the decision could lead to problems down the road. And South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem said what they're doing in Colorado is Biden's only hope of winning the election in November. Joining us to tell us more, Governor Noem. Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Kellyanne. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So, Governor, I think it's a very important point you make, and RFK Jr., of all people, took to X, formerly known as Twitter, and really gave a robust defense of the people, said that we can't let the courts and political manipulation decide our presidents. That right belongs to the people. But as a governor, what would you say if your highest court was to deny someone access to the ballot?
Well, what they're doing is unconstitutional, and it has no grounds. I think what is key is what you said earlier, Kellyanne, and that was that he hasn't been charged or convicted at all of insurrection. And so it's interesting that the Colorado Supreme Court has used this as the basis for their reason for removing him from the ballot. So that's the hypocrisy that we're seeing right here of how they're trying to work the system in a very unfair way, because they're so concerned, the left is so concerned about losing this election to President Trump. He will win, make no mistake, regardless of what Colorado does and what their Supreme Court decides, that President Trump will win the primary election, he'll win the general election, and that's because of the left consistently taking extreme measures like this and degrading our society and destroying America from its foundation and up.
And if he does win again, I'm sure he'll return to Mount Rushmore to be with you and everyone else in South Dakota for July 4th celebration. So, Governor Noem, would you be able to bar Biden from the ballot in your state of South Dakota if, say, he violated that part of the 14th Amendment by unfreezing assets for Iran or allowed terrorists to just openly walk over the southern border? I mean, do you think that you'd have that power, or your highest court would have that power?
You know, I don't believe so. That's what is so interesting. It's, the process that the court has is a balance to our federal government. It is a balance to our executive branch, a balance to our legislative branch. So us exerting the kind of influence on the court and their decisions to take that kind of action is really unprecedented. So I trust our South Dakota state laws, our Constitution. It gives great guidance to us, and our court system understands that their job is to follow statute and give decisions based on the scales of justice. I'm very proud of what we do here in South Dakota. I would be hopeful that other states would do that and not let liberal judges rewrite the rules of the game to work for their political interests. This is where the Supreme Court should, and I hope will, take quick action, strong action to reverse this decision at the lower court and make sure that they do the right thing by the American people and make sure their voices are heard. President Trump will win, and my hope is that they allow this election to be held fairly and let the people weigh in and to choose the president that they want in the White House.
And Governor Noem, in light of yesterday's Colorado Supreme Court decision, many around President Trump, but many others, are crying election interference. We know all about voter exclusion, voter intimidation. This almost seems like voter elimination, supplanting the will of the people with judicial imperiousness. It just also strikes some people, Governor Noem, something we're both familiar with, that conservatives or center-right voters, Trump supporters, being called deplorable, irredeemable, mega MAGA. Now they're being castigated and denigrated in a different way, that they can't possibly be wise and judicious in their presidential selection. So the Supreme Court of Colorado must do it for them by kicking someone off the ballot. But what do you think of that? I'm sure you hear from people all the time that feel shadow banned and censored and canceled. How does this play into that, if at all?
You know, I see both sides of it. I see people consistently seeing the hypocrisy and the corruption that is happening from the left and how they're using this against people that are their enemies in their agenda that they want to pursue. But I also would say, though, Kellyanne, is the more this stuff happens, the more they normalize it. The more often that they use our judicial system and our Supreme Court to play these political games, to go out and to fundamentally rewrite justice, the more it becomes normal in America. And that's what is so dangerous, is because the more often you see something, the more you don't blink at it the next time that it happens. The more it seems like, oh, well, that's just something that happens. That is increasing so often now in the last year or two, where we have our courts being used to punish political opponents in a way that I just don't remember seeing 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Now it's being used on a daily basis. I believe that's dangerous for our way of life, because that then becomes normal to the American people, and they start to think that that is something that is okay. It is not okay. That's what's made America special for so many generations, is the fact that we were a country of freedom. We were a country of the people, a republic, where they get to decide. We don't live by dictatorships or a direction of an elite few making the decisions for the people. Our motto in South Dakota is under God, the people rule. We enforce that every day by following our Constitution. I would hope in the United States of America we remember what our Constitution says as well.
Unfortunately, millions and millions of Americans agree with those very points. Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, thank you for joining us. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.